I do wonder if it'll actually end up raining today. Go to all messages so I can see people as they come in. As we gather up the horde, I got into an argument yesterday with one of my coworkers. I hope I don't blow up and get fired. Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's, it sounds like the ball is in your court if that's the case. So maybe just avoiding that person would be the best thing you can do, or just try to be polite but not involved, if that makes sense. You don't want to give any kind of complicated responses. You don't want to give somebody who's already pissing you off an opportunity to piss you off further, is what I'm trying to say. No reason why a dickbag that's already making you feel like shit should get an opportunity to make you feel even more like shit. That's basically all I'm saying. All I told them was to be direct because they made another coworker cry. Oh, geez. Yeah. No, I'm not saying you're in the wrong. I'm just saying, if you're worried about getting fired because you might blow up with this person, just, it's one of those things where you have to choose your battles, dude. That's one of the reasons why I'm such a big proponent of unionization, right? Is because unionization solves a lot of the problems that people deal with at work. Number one, people not getting along. Well, a lot of the reason why people don't get along is because capitalism encourages us to see each other as a form, as a source of competition, right? So all of your fellow workers, your coworkers, the people you work around, your bosses, etc., they're all in competition for wages that you could be getting. That's what capitalism frames everything as, is a big competition. Unionization encourages people to work together for common benefit. And that sort of thing just by itself helps to break down some of those barriers, helps to break down some of those tensions. Hi! But, yeah, it helps to break down some of those barriers and tensions, but it also encourages people to meet outside of their workplace for a common good. And, unions and regular participation in unions also gives people an opportunity to raise grievances and have those grievances be worked out. So, that's one of the reasons why I pushed that solution so hard. He then told me to mind my effing business. I don't know what it's like to
work. I have no idea what's going on. I know I'm not in the wrong. I'm just telling you because I feel scared as if I might get fired, right? Well, I will say, you said you're working at Walmart, right? You said you were working, because um, if so, you're probably not. No? No? Well, are you working at a big chain or something like that? If you're working at a big chain, or if you're working in retail or food service, chances are good that you're not going to get fired over that little thing. Like, usually, if you're going to get fired over an outburst or something like that, usually you're going to get fired right in that moment. Um, or you'll get sent home at the very least. If you weren't talked to that day, I would just stop being worried about it. I work at a Korean corn dog place. No, it's owned by two families. Oh, okay. Well, the next question is: the person you went off on related in any way to those families? Because if the person you're feuding with is not related to the two families, I would say that you're probably fine. No, but he has been there for like a year. You'd be surprised how little loyalty people are shown merely for their tenure these days. I would say you're probably fine, but ultimately, no, like worrying about it isn't gonna change the situation either way. Either you're gonna get fired and it's gonna suck, or they'll talk to you about it and you go from there. But either way, worrying about it does nothing but make you upset. It doesn't make them feel any worse about being the way that they were being. It doesn't make you feel any better. So yeah, you're right. Thanks for talking with me about it. No problem. Um, I'm not trying to say you're not right for feeling that way. I totally get it. I'm the same exact way, dude. Like, I spent 2 days being mad at my boss when I got fired recently. And ultimately, it's like I said. There's a reason behind those sorts of beliefs, and it's understandable, but it's also not something that serves you. You know, Gays for Trump. Well, there's four people in here. I guess that's enough to fucking start talking about it. So, what do we think about this news that Trump is trying to broker, trying again actually to, and has been trying to broker a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia? What do we think about that? Because that's exactly what I was wanting Biden to do for his entire presidency. Not his entire presidency. It's not like the conflict had been going on throughout the entire presidency, but during Biden's tenure, during the years when the Ukraine Russia conflict had ramped up since 2021, basically, or was it 21 or 22? It was 22, I think, actually. Anyway, ever since that ramped up, I had been saying that what would be best is if Biden would actually engage in a meaningful way in diplomacy, right? And now we see, like, I'm hearing news that Trump is apparently trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. I know Trump has lifted sanctions on Syria after 45 years. So think about how many presidents have said, no, Syria needs to have sanctions on it. And now Trump is the first dude that's finally said, no, you know what? That's kind of stupid. Like, we don't need to be. And you know what? God, it's kind of weird, right? Um, I hate Trump's social policies here at home. Utterly hate them. I think he's an authoritarian, a bigot, and a fascist as far as his policy here at home goes in regards to marginalized communities here in America. But as far as his foreign policy goes, at least so far, he's turning out to be the first peacemaking president we've had in 30 years, 40 years, maybe. The first guy who's actually gone against the neoconservative attitude of America needs to go out there and tell other countries how they need to be living, and make sure that other countries aren't falling to communism or falling to jihadism or anything like that. He's the first president since the neoconservative movement started who has not carried on that legacy. And so, are we possibly looking at the return to the age of the mixed bag? Good morning. Hello. Hello, hello. Like the live, yes, please. Every single time you hit that like button is another chance for this stream to grow in popularity and for the chat to get even bigger, which does nothing but help the stream get more interesting. So if you're enjoying the conversation, please leave a like. But yeah, so what do we think about this whole Trump the peacemaker thing? I think it's like, okay, well, great. That means we've finally got a mixed bag again. You know, God, it kind of sucks to say it. On a certain level, it sucks on an ego level, right? To say, damn, look, he's actually doing something right. But on the other hand, as a leftist, I just want people to stop dying in the Middle East, you know, for American oil interests. I really don't care if it comes from Trump, Biden, Harris, or some unrelated politician. I don't care if God himself comes down and does it. I just want it done. Do you have a wiener? The fact that you don't know just by looking at me tells me everything I need to know about your obsession with trans people. What a weirdo. Trying to have a political conversation, and somebody's sitting here asking about my dick. It's like the weirdest fucking thing ever. Gemma, what do you think? Because I know you're, pretty anti-Trump just like I am, so what do we think about all this? Is this like a broken clock right twice a day kind of situation? You know what? It'll be really interesting to see the left come out against what Trump is doing right now. And it just sucks, dude. You know what sucks? It sucks that things have become so harshly divided along party lines. It sucks that things have become so divided along party lines because this right now, this news we're talking about right now, Russia and Ukraine possibly coming to peace thanks to a deal that Trump might help broker, uh, sanctions being lifted on Syria after 45 years. These are all peacemaking gestures that the left should like, that I like as a member of the left, and that I feel like a lot of party unaligned leftists are going to recognize as a good thing. They'll probably still include the nuance that I did, that, Trump is still a fascist here at home. He's still ridiculously draconian on border policy and things like that. But he did help to broker the first actual peace in the Middle East that's existed in years and years and years and years. Now, it's a peace built on the foundation of corpses, but, what peace isn't? That's one thing I've had to kind of accept about activism over the last 20 years. Well, not 20 years, but reading about the last 20 years. Your lunch walked with your mind, you crazy as fuck. That must be a phrase I am unfamiliar with, my friend. That sounds like something I'd hear. Okay, maybe this sounds horribly racist, but it sounds like something I'd hear black folks in the South saying, but I've never heard it before, so I don't know the translation immediately. It also sounds like something that that very country, rural white people might be saying. It's kind of hard to tell. There's a lot of sayings that, due to the history of race relations in Southern America, there's a lot of sayings that are shared by both rural white people and urban black people, which is kind of weird because a lot of them share descendants from the same thing, from the same ancestral language basis. Tips on embezzlement? I'm way too poor to help you out there. Way too fucking poor to help you out there. I guess I'm more concerned about what's happening over here, but that might be selfishness. I feel like a lot of people feel that way. And really, I don't blame you. I'm ultimately more concerned with what's happening over here personally, but I also am, maybe this is just my inability to tamper down my empathy for any reason, but I cannot help but have my heart pulled at by the cries of the children in Gaza, or the cries of the children in Syria, or any of the other countries that America has decided to fund conflicts in and to help wars in, right? I cannot help but have my heart bleed for those people. And seeing someone actually engage in peacemaking efforts makes my heart happy, even if that person is horrible here at home. Now, if he gets a certain level of horrible, then it doesn't matter anymore if he's a peacemaker abroad. But as of right now, I think it's actually kind of a mixed bag. Your daddy Joe says it all the time. What makes you think I'm a Joe Biden supporter? What, me talking critically about Trump means that I have to like Biden? Is that how your small mind works? Let me see here. That's how I feel, honestly. I'm just going to wait and see what's going to happen. Yeah, Gemma, that's kind of, yeah. I'm going to wait and see what happens. Because you know what? If Trump's fucking border policy remains draconian, but a social policy basically stays where it's at right now, more or less, then I'm going to have to probably say at the end of the Trump presidency that it was our first mixed bag since, what, Reagan? Damn, already some madness on here. I know, and it's not normally, our morning streams are not normally this bright and airy, but hey, here we are, making entertainment for the people, talking about Trump, talking about politics, talking about the possible mixed bag presidency that we're looking at, which is a first in fucking decades. So, golf clap for that. Hi, hello, welcome. Make sure you guys hit that like button. It really does help the channel. Thank you so much. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the next 4 years look like. I mean, here's honestly the if there's any kind of silver line, if there's two silver linings to the Trump presidency, in my opinion, as a hardcore leftist. I'm an anarchist at heart. Here are the two bright spots on the Trump presidency, as far as I can see them, and as far as my morality is concerned. Number one, he is attempting to be a peacemaker in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. That's cool. That's dope. Wish Biden had done that. And he could have and didn't for whatever reason. Nothing that Trump is doing on that front is so Republican Biden couldn't have done it, especially given the Democratic Party's race to the right in recent years. So, with that being said, the other bright lining is that can you guys tell me how much stuff had happened in the Biden presidency by this point in it? Because we just hit the 100-day mark of about a month ago, I think, and now we're looking at what, like 5 months under Trump, and even a lot of it, even though a lot of it's shit I don't agree with, even though a lot of it's shit I didn't want to happen, think about how much shit has happened. They're all crooks. It's not about left or right. It's about rich versus poor. I know. Um, you have to understand that part of what I engage in here, is discussion about politics from the like discussion about politics where I take in the perspectives of people that I don't necessarily, fully go along with the complete worldviews of. Like I'm not a Biden supporter or a Trump supporter, but the only way I'm going to be able to convince a Trump person long enough to stick around long enough to listen to me talk about some class consciousness shit, right? Talking about some Trump shit and talking about, talking honestly about politics. In my opinion, that is one of the best ways to get people who don't already agree with that idea to start taking your ideas more seriously, is to engage them on the level that they are engaging, you know? You have no idea about politics, so don't talk about it? What the fuck makes you think I don't have any idea about politics? I'm literally sitting here making astute observations about politics. How many subscribers do you have on the back of talking about politics? How much money have you made on the basis of talking about politics? if you change your appearance temporarily, bro, I've been dressing this way. I've had this shirt specifically for over 5 years. So, nice try, but no. Man, someone is salty, but only one of us gets paid to be salty. By the way, if you want to make absolutely sure that your comment gets read, I do have Super Chat enabled. Here, Perseus, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to make the chat readable. Hold on. I hate having to do this because I feel like it definitely scares some people off, but you just got to do it sometimes. You got to do it to them. Because folks don't want to behave. There we go. Are there no other mods here? No, Perseus. I think because of the time zones, you're pretty much the only person who is awake and available at this time to be able to do streams like this and to monitor them. So I really appreciate the help. I tremendously appreciate the help. But yeah, not like in the mornings, we're usually the only two people here. It is what it is. But yeah, no, I don't think I'm a genius at politics, y'all. I just think that I've paid attention over the last 10 years, which is how long I've been politically active. I voted in my first election when I was 18 years old. I voted in the election of 2016, voted Gary Johnson. In 2020, I voted Joe Biden because I thought he was less of a, I thought he would be less bad than Trump. Looking back on it, I don't know. I guess it depends, right? Because if at the end of the Trump presidency we're facing peace in the Middle East and an economic upturn here at home, then honestly I'll say, yeah, I'm glad I voted for Biden because that's what enabled Trump to win in 2024. And if it turns out that Trump is what enables people like me to buy a house again, even if he sets trans rights back a few years, I feel like that's something that we can undo the moment he gets out of office. But if he sets the economy up right, and if people like me can buy a house again, or if people like me can have more purchasing power or something like that at the end of the presidency, it'll be pretty hard for me to say, yeah, I wish I wish Trump had won in 2020, because I think if Trump had won in 2020, we would have seen. I think the last 4 years were going to be lame duck presidency no matter who won, is what I'm trying to say. I think that if Trump had won, he would have just coasted on his legacy, and I don't think you would have seen much transformative shit. Maybe, but I really don't think so. But I think maybe things going the way they went actually might have ended up taking things in a positive direction, possibly. Like I said, we have to wait and see. Once more, the moderation of this channel is my cross to carry. I know, Perseus, and I'm sorry. Oh man. Anyway, so yeah. Like the stream. But yeah, so it's crazy to think about how sometimes things just work out the way that they need to, I still feel reticent to comment too heavily on what the Trump presidency is going to be, because honestly, it's already surprised me in a number of ways. I kind of thought it might just be another lame duck presidency anyway, because that's what Trump's first term was, and that's what I was on here saying, was that, Trump's not going to do shit, he's going to be a lazy fuck, we're barely going to see anything, and then day one, he signs like 26 executive orders, and over the course of the last 5 months, it's been change after change after change after change. So it's been actually a really active presidency, where I was expecting a pretty lame duck one. So that tells me, Trump's a little bit of a wild card this time around. Maybe a little harder to predict. So I really don't know what's going to happen. But if the pattern continues from where it's at right now, we could be looking at what is ultimately a pretty cool and productive few years. If we can like band together, if the American people need to just like start loudly, proudly, and outwardly rejecting the bigoted rhetoric and shit. Because I genuinely believe if enough people who feel differently about that, which there are people who voted for Trump who are not bigots, you know, and I feel like if enough people are loud about that again, and if we stand in solidarity with each other, I really think that we can beat that tendency back, you know? I think Trump is very prone to public opinion, in other words. And I think that if we made a concerted effort to reject that sort of bigotry and that sort of bigoted rhetoric, I think that we would see a commensurate policy shift within um, his presidency, if not the Republican Party in general, because we're probably not going to get them. They'll be bigoted till that doesn't win votes anymore. Although the sad thing is that they'll probably just adopt the Democratic strategy, which the Democratic strategy is, um, you know, it just goes to show you that the people who, like the old guard, like the landowning elite in this country, as we might say, and people who got theirs, and people who were really invested in politics on an electoral level, I do think that they trend conservative, and I think nothing shows that more than the fact that both parties invoke conservatism just in different ways, right? The Republican Party is the outward face of it, whereas the Democratic Party makes it a little more subtle. You know, the Dems they distribute their conservatism in the South and stuff, and they don't make it like a primary part of their messaging. But if you're a Republican who really doesn't like Trump, the Democrats make sure that you know, oh, there's some of your people among us. Don't worry. There's some people who like unions and hate them some queers among our number. Don't worry. Bullshit. It's why we need a new third party. It's why we need a third party. It's why we need a replacement for the Democratic Party or a third party. Because both of these parties talk out of both sides of their mouths. Because the Republicans do the same bullshit. The Republicans do the same fucking bullshit. There are Republicans who are functionally Democrats. There are Republicans who half the shit that, like 90% of the shit that they say is perfectly reasonable, damn near leftist shit, and 10% of it is like, but I'm anti-abortion. And that's like the whole reason they're conservatives, because they're anti-abortion. And they're like anti-gay people adopting, which in my mind are pretty mundane issues if you're talking about someone who also supports labor rights, unionization, workers' rights in general, and fights against companies who want to exploit people. And like in a world where those are the parties that you have to work with, where neither of them has any real cohesion, where they've got like an outward face, but also here's just to trick you kind of face. It's just bullshit. It's bullshit. And there should be a party where, you know what, good, bad, right, or wrong, you like our policies, you don't like our policies, this is what we believe. And I don't think it should be an extraordinary long list that requires you to read a bunch of books to understand it. I think it could be like 5 fucking issues. I think it could be like 5 to 10 issues that the party takes a strong fucking stance on. And that if you are a member of that party, you agree with that. That's how you see it. And say, yeah, like any other fucking position, whatever, that person have their own opinions on it. But like I think that would be a really really good way to fix this problem of parties that have like this outward face of what they believe, but then there's all kinds of people who are operatives within that party who clearly don't have those beliefs and don't act upon them. That was a really short one. Mr. President, I'm tired of winning all the time. We're tired of all the winning. Especially record-setting numbers. I don't know what numbers you're referring to, but right on. Yeah, no, I mean it's not all wins. Like the tariffs and shit, those are pretty bad. Trump's inaction as of right now on housing prices, that's pretty shitty. Trump's social positions, him forbidding trans people from getting their gender marker changed on federal documents, that's shitty. Him ramping up the war on immigration, that's shitty. But him being a peacemaker in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, that's amazing. That's great. I'm so happy to see that because it represents a stark fucking policy shift in the Republican Party. Do you guys realize how long Straussian neoconservatism has formed the basis of the Republican Party? Are you guys at all aware of how long that has been a fucking thing? That's been since the late 70s. Y'all need to realize that shit. Y'all need to realize how long we've been dealing with a very specific trend in American conservatism. That is why we keep going to war. And that is Straussian neoconservatism. And Trump being a peacemaker, possibly, opens the door to maybe the Republicans are finally moving away from Straussianism. Honestly, I just want to afford basic needs, lol. That's what I'm saying, is like, on the domestic front, I don't think Trump's been great because basic necessities are still way too expensive in comparison to the wages people are making. There's been no action. In fact, there's been negative action on and things like that. It's a very pro-corporate presidency here at home, and that fucking blows because we need help from our government. The reason why we need help from our government is because the corporations that our government is allowed to run roughshod over the people have fucked us 9 ways from Sunday and are trying to shove it in even deeper, if you can believe it. Taking out a third mortgage in America to buy some eggs. Well, yeah, unless you have chickens or something, and all of our chickens died off due to natural disaster, basically. So we have to, we don't buy eggs that often anymore. We have some babies, and when they lay, we'll harvest those eggs and use them. We have quail, but you can't, you have to crack so many fucking quail eggs to get the amount that you would get for a regular egg. You have to crack 5 fucking quail eggs to get a regular egg's worth of egg. But I mean, they're great for just having a gourmet meal, but they're not something you'd want to be eating every day. Make sure you guys hit that like button, by the way. It really does help. The fact that people work 40 hours and still sometimes have to worry about not being able to pay bills and groceries and maybe even the life-altering medications they need. Yeah, I mean, that's been the biggest problem in America for decades now, right? That was a problem when I was growing up. That was a problem 20 years ago. My parents talk about their childhoods, and it was a problem in their childhoods. My dad was born in 1965, and my mom in 72, so we're talking the 70s and the late 60s and the 80s all the way through the 90s. It's been 50 fucking years of wage stagnation, of job stagnation, of inflation, of people being discouraged amongst all this shit from growing their own food and doing other things that would encourage them to gain economic stability. It's an active and concerted effort on the part of the ownership class to keep you and me and people like us in chains, to keep us from getting enough wealth to make our own decisions, to keep us from gaining enough autonomy to not have to work in their factories and their fast food places and their retail stores. It's not an accident. It's not a mistake. It's not a misjudgment of purpose. It's a concerted activity. State-funded healthcare / housing and food is the most efficient way to meet the needs of the working class, in my opinion. See, Perseus, this is why talking to you is really fun and really interesting, because well, I'm not, but I can pause it for a minute. You sure? Well, I want to hear the update. It's not going to take an hour. Surely it's not going to take an hour. All right, I'll be right back. Ah. Okay. We've only got 28 people left. The loyal few. I used to own some Lockheed Martin, but I've diversified a bit. Well, good. What, did you get into Raytheon and Boeing instead? Now would be a great time to get into Boeing, I imagine. With all the whistleblowers and all that shit. The name of the game is supposed to be buy low, sell high, right? But as far as I can tell, the real art of the game there is figuring out when a company has reached its bottom, but also knowing when a company is going to come back up, Like Boeing, I don't think they're going to go away. Maybe they get purchased by a competitor or something, but, I don't think they're going to go away. Follow the Wicked Witch Nancy Pelosi with a hawk's eyes if you want to get serious about elite controlled stocks. Oh yeah, 100%. That's been kind of an open secret for a while. Is that Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi's trades are very clearly influenced by Nancy's position as a high-level Democratic operative. Like a high-level government executive or whatever. She's not an executive. What am I saying? What is she? How is she a fucking? I can't remember if she's a senator or a House rep. Invest in tangible goods used in manufacturing, electronics, and supercomputing are the future. Quartz, silver, gold, etc. I don't know about that shit. When I say that, I mean I literally don't know about it, so I can't comment on it with any verisimilitude. I've considered going into electronics like chips, but most of my stocks are in good old weapon manufacturers because war. Yeah, I mean, hey, uh, what is guaranteed but war, death, and taxes? Most of my current stocks are in BAE Systems and Saab. Ah, okay. Gotcha. Tim forward, good buddy. Drones are the future? In a sense, yeah. In fact, last night I was walking around thinking about this, what I eventually want to make into an NPC unit in this D&D game I want to uh, write up, a campaign I want to make. It's going to be a pretty homebrewed campaign because it's going to be like a far-flung future kind of thing. But in my mind, it takes place after some theoretical fall of humanity after we've continued along our current track for as long as we could and then ran out of oil real sudden, you know? Um, but I was walking around thinking about how at some point in the future, there are going to be, and where it'll probably start is security, because that's where a lot of R&D is already focused. But at some point in the future, there are going to be walking security drones that will have detachable top parts, basically, that can, and autonomous walking units. They can detach. The walking unit can park itself in a charger or can lower itself to the ground so it's not a safety hazard. And then the top part flies around and monitors areas where it's dangerous to walk around or something like that, and then returns to its legs and rises back up and moves to the next area. That type of shit is going to be ubiquitous in things like amusement parks and stuff like that in just a few years. Just a few short years, you're going to see security drones like that popping up everywhere. You're already starting to see police drones being used in the form of those Boston Dynamics dogs and things like that. So it is just a short while. I'm not even kidding. It is just going to be like a little bit of a short while before you start to see drones, meaning unmanned robotic vehicles, everywhere. I mean, drones, if you just mean quadcopters, are already ubiquitous. They are already to be found, like, you'll find 5 of them at every public gathering you go to. There's even, there's at least 2 drone operators at every rainbow gathering these days. Think about that. The fucking rainbow gathering, nobody even carries fucking phones in there, but there's going to be a couple of motherfuckers with drones, you know? BlackRock, as utterly evil as they are, is a safe bet. Safe, but I'd keep a close eye on it. Follow Nancy. Yeah, dude. That's the fucking thing about investing. That's why I think I'm so repulsed by it, because ultimately what you're asking someone to do is just invest in evil. Don't invest in town and country. Who the fuck cares where they're going? Don't invest in uh, whatever retail company. Who the fuck, like, you know? That might be part of your diversified portfolio, but your real money makers, your real fucking buy low, sell high winners are going to be the fucking, it's going to be the war industry, especially because, like, you know what? I think I just kind of figured something out just by sitting here talking and thinking about it, about the stock market. Dude, I figured out the reason why war stocks make people rich, why people invest in them so heavily, because they are subject to government negotiating, and they are subject to the president's word. So if a president like Trump starts talking about cutting a bunch of military contracts, then suddenly of value can fall out of these military contractor stocks. And so you buy up a bunch of them, but when the negotiations are over and they get that new deal, then suddenly the stock shoots back up again, and you've made $20 per stock or whatever. And if you bought 100 of them, now you're looking at, like, what would that be, like, $200, and that's assuming that, like, it's some kind of cheaper stock. Obviously, if it's like a super expensive stock and you bought 100 of them, you probably made a lot more than $20. BAE and BlackRock are up. I'm planning to buy more BlackRock. You ever watch Chappie, Phoebe? I like those kinds of drones, humanoid in shape and therefore are backwards compatible with equipment. Walmart was good, but I've stopped caring about them. Right on, right on. No, I've never watched Chappie, but that is an interesting. It is an interesting idea. I just think that it's not necessarily the direction we're going, but it would be interesting to see how that sort of thing happens, right? What I think will probably end up happening, given the trends that I've seen in technology, I think that there are going to be, probably soon in the future, we're going to start seeing cars that, I mean, there are already cars that can drive themselves with motors within their, like, all the control surfaces have motors attached to them that can render control to them. That's already standard in a shit ton of cars. They don't have full self-driving capability, but they have things like lane assist and stuff that are all powered by what is effectively already an ability for a computer to control that car through motors and actuators and things like that. And so I think we're going to see that trend become ubiquitous. I think it's going to exist in all cars pretty much. And I think we're going to start to see maybe we'll probably see someone develop, or a company develop, some kind of docking station that allows these outward terminals, whatever this technology we're referencing that becomes the way that we see robots most commonly. Um, it allows them to dock and interact with that device and use it directly in a way that doesn't involve it having to manipulate the um controls of a vehicle. Because, in my opinion, that is just a needless failure point. It seems like it would just be a needless failure point when you could just have the device make an electron, and then, it does what it needs to. I really do love to think about what our techno future utopia could look like if we ever get there. If we ever manage to get there, what kind of technology will we be looking at? Who the fuck knows? Like, will we be living in a world where most of our, like, where all the mundane jobs are done by, like, a fleet of robots, a few different makes and models doing different things in different places? You wake up one day to find that this walker idea I'm talking about exists, and it's there, and it's not just doing security. Now it's taking your order and delivering your packages, and like integrating itself on electronic taxis to give you rides. I mean, it could get pretty crazy pretty quick, and I think it could be a veritable utopia. I'm not afraid of AI the way a lot of people are. You know, I don't think that it's destined to turn against us. I just think people have been conditioned by movies. Speaking of robots, what are y'all's thoughts on them replacing females/males, but more than likely females being replaced? Uh, what are you talking about? I'm not. Like, who's talking about replacing females with robots? How would you even do that? Like, how would you make more human beings? I don't get it. Besides that, I think if that is perceived as being a movement amongst scientists, I think it's because that there's like a group of there's like a small group of tech bros who are convinced that the rest of the world hates women as much as they do. And so they think like, oh yeah, dudes would of course just want to send all the women to the fucking gulags and replace them with robots. But the truth of it is, well, it would probably be the other way around. But I don't think anybody wants to get rid of anybody. I think that there's a very small group of people in every large group of people that wants to get rid of everybody else on the planet. But I think that that's just the human fucking. I think that there's a latent instinct that pops out in 1 out of every 100 people that is just like an instinct for world domination and destruction. And I think that those people, maybe they have their use. Maybe they are the water that dissolves away the limestone of culture and reveals the beautiful things underneath. Maybe they are the earthquake that redefines a mountain range and brings new resources to the forefront, you know? 20 years ago, we never imagined having a computer in our pockets. What will advance to the point of artificial insemination being as easy? Sex dolls are already getting even more advanced. I mean, in order to replicate the human process of like as a parent, I can tell you the process of having a baby is one of the most complex and biologically involved processes that you can go through. Literally, it's insane to think about how many things have to go right for that to come out and for everything to be correct. So I'm not saying you couldn't replicate it with technology, because I am, I'm literally divided in half between techno-futurist and anarcho-primitivist. On the one hand, I think we could go really far and do great things. On the other hand, I don't think we're very likely to. So I think that while we hope for our eco-green techno-future utopia, I think that while we hope for that, we need to be composting, we need to be gardening, we need to be taking care of animals, we need to be learning how to boil water, we need to be learning how to make fire, we need to be learning how to shoot, how to defend ourselves, etc. Because that's the path I think we're likely to take. And I don't think that there's no possibility it happens in my lifetime either. I think that this world could be thrown into utter turmoil by the coming end of oil as soon as 20 years from now. So, but I hope that we spend those 20 years finding ways to divorce ourselves from the need for petroleum, because whether you think it's contributing to climate change or not, it's a limited resource. We need to get away from it and get to things that we could actually feasibly recycle, because at that point, eventually we solve the problem of sustainability. And at that point, we're a species that can survive along geological time. And if we can survive along geological time, then we can fix it. We can wait for new resources to generate at that point. We have to get to that point, and I think we've got like 20 years to do it. to put ourselves into the position of being at that point someday, more like. Oh, good morning, Andrew. Thank you. By the way, make sure you guys hit that like button. It really does help the stream. My granddad still mistrusts smartphones. When I brought him an iPhone, let me see here. When I brought him an iPhone, he threw it out the window saying, "Don't let the devil into your house." What the fuck? Really? That is insane. Dude, that is a level of fear and paranoia to which I can only aspire. Phoebe, yes, we are losing skills. Wall-E is a great watch. Yeah, I mean, I think it exaggerates like every piece of dystopian media does, but yes, I think Wall-E is kind of an astute observation of how this sort of thing go. Think about how fucking old that movie is, and then why did I say it like that? Anyway, think about how old that movie is, and then think about how prescient it still is, right? Back then, that's the direction people saw things going, and now it's still that way, But yeah, see, I think that here's the beautiful thing. I think that techno-future utopia that we might could get into one day, I think would still feature people knowing, learning, sharing, and distributing those skills. But it would it'd actually be better and easier for people to do, right? Because right now there's so much, there's such an arduous process to being able to actually exercise those skills if you don't own land yourself. So I live on enough land that's owned by, our family owns the land, and it's like 2 acres, I think, and a lot of it's pretty fucking wooded, So if I wanted to, I could, in theory, go out back here somewhere and do a demonstration on starting a fire or something like that, right? I could do it in a fire pit, But what I'm saying is that I'm in the unique position of being able to work these skills and exercise them and everything, but a lot of people aren't in that position, and the reason they're not in that position is because the current system of wage slave capitalism keeps people in a constant, number one, it keeps them in a constant state of having to work for the right to live, and number two, it keeps people out of places that they should by all rights be able to go into, right? I'm not saying that the use of natural spaces shouldn't be regulated, but think about how hard it can be to find out just who exactly owns a certain patch of land. If there's not a house on it or something like that, and you want to be able to hunt there, you want to be able to go out camping there. Think about how fucking difficult it is to get a hold of that person and to just find out who they are. A lot of people don't even know that there's a process for doing that you can go down to the county courthouse and find out exactly who owns every single patch of land in your county. But if you don't know that, it's going to take you sifting through Reddit answers to find that out, and then driving all the way down there and all this other shit, when in reality, if there ain't nobody got a house on it, and like, the considerations that are there are safety ones that can be met in ways that should not have to be so arduous, Like if a certain woods is known to contain deer and people are known to hunt there, then you just post signs saying that, so that people are fucking aware. If you make the and here's another thing too, if you make the standard that you have to wear hunter green or hunter orange when you're out in the fucking woods, I think you've solved the problem. And that's the main problem I could see arising from a more free and open land policy. Is like random people getting shot during hunting season because somebody thinks that they're on a patch of land that's not occupied by anybody else, and then somebody else is rustling around the bushes and ends up getting shot, right? But that problem is solved if you, just make sure that everybody in your culture hunts with hunter orange on. There you go, solved it. In Cyberpunk, petroleum ran out, and they solved the problem by mass growing GMO corn and distilling it into what is essentially liquid ethanol, and then using that in cars. Yeah, that's pretty much what I see us doing. I mean, Real talk, that's what I see us doing. Um, I think that it's the most efficient method to get over the requirement that we currently have on combustion-based engines. Like the reliance we have. Like like we are incredibly reliant on ICE engines, and as long as that's the case, as long as we're reliant on ICE, we're going to be, or ICEs, I guess you would say, we're going to need some kind of fuel source that we don't need to drill out of the earth. And right now, it's looking like the best one is going to be ethanol, probably with some additives that are synthetically generated from some other component. The downside of ethanol is that it's very easy to ignite, not very safe for transport, if I remember correctly. You could sneeze and it'd explode. Oh, that's not true. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's quite that sensitive. I mean, yeah, like it ignites pretty easily, but so does gasoline. I mean, like gasoline ignites super fucking easily. It doesn't ignite on impact, but it will ignite. It'll ignite with a spark. It's vapors, which gasoline God, I can't talk today. Gasoline evaporates pretty quickly, so gasoline vapors will explode super easily. I mean, gasoline vapors is the entire premise of how carburetors used to work. If I understand how a carburetor works correctly, the idea of a carburetor is not that you're getting like liquid gas into the fucking piston. It's that you're getting like gasoline vapor laden air into the piston. But I still don't know if I understand a carburetor exactly correctly. It's not nitro. Yeah, exactly. It's not fucking nitro. God, that's a hard word for me. Nitroglycerin. There we go. Diesel is hard to ignite, safer to transport. Yeah, biodiesel I think is also a good alternative. And yeah, diesel in general is way easier to transport and way harder to ignite. Diesel fuel, if I remember correctly, does not. Uh, Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't just like set diesel fuel on fire, right? Like it explodes under high pressure, if I remember correctly. This life is so lovely during work. Just the randoms, life interesting topics. Thank you. Aw, well you're so welcome. I'm glad. You know, I listen to a lot of podcasts while I'm working too, so it's good to know that I'm out there providing entertainment for people that are out there on the grind. So hey, you keep at it, and I hope you have a wonderful day at work. Biodiesel is definitely the future. It powers generators and requires less refining, thus cutting down on energy costs per gallon produced. That's cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. So that's actually really dope. Hey, if biodiesel is the way to go, then biodiesel is the way to go. I think biogas or biodiesel, either one, is probably better than mining it up out of the earth, right? Like I'm fine with ICE engines. I just want them to be powered on something we're not running out of. I genuinely believe we could fucking figure out how to imagine this, guys. Imagine this. Imagine a world where we have ICE engines and what needs to have them, and we've got electronic cars powering all of our inner city driving and that kind of thing, right? But we've got ICE engines where it makes sense to have them. And all of it is offset by the fact that we build our buildings with nature in mind, that nature has a prominent place on the rooftops, on the gardens, that there are gardens. Um, Imagine you drive into a city and rather than a mess of billboards and McDonald's and advertising, You see that McDonald's, but it's got a rooftop garden now, and the sign has um, air plants at the very top of it, or has some kind of easily maintained and short growing grass on the top of it. Um, you look around at the median, and instead of it just being one boring row of nothing but field grass, it's a naturally varied and a naturally um, what's the word I'm looking for? It's got all the indigenous plants of that area littered throughout it. And you go further into the city, right? So you go further into the city and you start looking around at the skyscrapers, right? But instead of seeing the skyscrapers, well, obviously you're not going to be able to tear down skyscrapers that easily. So see some skyscrapers, but instead of seeing just greenery, or I'm sorry, instead of just seeing sidewalks and concrete around them, every place you can have plants, there are plants. And then in places where skyscrapers do get demolished, instead of building skyscrapers there, they build tall buildings with integrated gardens that get narrower, progressively narrower as the building gets taller. But every floor is a little bit taller to accommodate a little bit more structure, a little bit more strength, And you've got massive internal gardens based on a sloping design that allows sunlight to access the interior of those gardens and provide a variety of lighting situations. You've got solar panels covering the parts of the building that are flat against parts of the sun, the parts of the building that the sun strikes directly. And you've got some full spectrum lighting on the inside of those balconies to assist the sunlight in providing a welcoming environment. And imagine that's what a city looks like. And so any power that is used, right, or any pollution that's produced by ice engines or anything like that is offset instantly and constantly by the use of buildings and architecture and technology that enables us to work with nature, to live among nature. The only fear with nuclear power plants is that the process usable is fairly close to the process of making it usable for weapons. Thus, theoretically, any country can, in theory, nuke. Yeah, I'm not a big proponent of nuclear power. I just think it can be, like you said, number one, it can be too easily misused, and number two, I think that there's too great a chance that you have another situation like Chernobyl happen, and it doesn't seem like we've really learned the lesson from Chernobyl, which in my mind, the lesson from Chernobyl should have been nuclear power just can't be close to a population center. If you're going to have nuke power, it needs to be out away from people, and it's funny because people seem to agree with me when it comes to any other power station. But for some reason, nuke power is supposed to just exist in the midst of towns and shit. No, nuke power needs to be out in the desert, out in the swamps, or well, maybe not the swamps, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it needs to be out away from shit that it could affect if it melts down and breaks down, because we can transport power real far. That's not, like, we've managed to cross that bridge. I think it's safe to say that nuke power can get that power to towns, even if it's not near them. Nobody wants a coal plant near them. Nobody wants a dam near them. Nobody wants uh, a giant solar farm near them or a giant wind farm near them. But for some reason, people are like, yeah, nuke plants. Like, and so many of the ones that I know about are like in city limits. It just makes no sense to me. Chernobyl situation is unlikely. I mean, the Russians were cheaping out on a few safety measures. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, you're not wrong. But at the same time, doesn't that fucking, to me, just screams opportunity for things to go wrong? Because America is not exactly known for going all out, balls out on safety measures. Um, I've worked a number of jobs in this country, and I've worked very few safe ones. Same with Japan. It took 2 acts of God to make it go critical. But it still happened. It still happened. It still poisoned a bunch of sea life and radiated a bunch of people. And why? Why, when Japan could probably have wind farming all over that country? Why, when Japan could probably have solar panels on every building? Like, why nuclear power? Like, what is the utility of it? What is the benefit of nuke power to other options? I've never, that's what I don't get, right? It would be one thing, in my mind, if nuclear power presented just an obvious and clear way forward that's way better than all the other ones for this, that, or the other reason. But that doesn't seem to be the truth of the situation. From what I can tell, nuke power offers a few advantages and a whole lot of drawbacks, not least of which is the irradiation of entire fucking areas of geography, right? And to me, that's just a one fucking thing you can't overcome without uh, the only way I think you can overcome that is just by moving the plant somewhere else. You have to not have it near population centers. If we're willing to agree on nuclear power, but moved away from towns, it's not close to people, it can't fuck people's lives up or fuck a bunch of animal life up when it melts down and goes critical, fine, great, because it's not guaranteed to. But um, the fact that 2 quote unquote acts of God were able to happen to shut down what is that place called? Fukushima. Yeah, the fact that it it took two natural disasters happening at once to melt down Fukushima. And we're living in an era of climate catastrophe, y'all. So the fact of it is, things like that are going to become more common, and they are already pretty unpredictable. So with that in mind, I think we all have to agree if we're going to have nuke power, it can't be close to people. And I think that there are better solutions than nuke power, period. Because nuke power, still, even if you take all that shit away, even if we make it fail safe, right? Even if we fill it with redundancy, even if we get America's fucking most senior chief pilots and shit, and we get the airline, and we get the not the airline industry, but we get the airmen themselves, right? Because that's one system where I think things have been fail safe to fuck, like whatever. We want to get them in on it and get this fucking system 100% safe. You still have to deal with the fact that you are consuming a material that once consumed has to be just buried in the ground somewhere. It can't be recycled, it can't be reused, it can't be repurposed, it can't be there's nothing you can do with this material but bury it way away from people and be done with it. And wherever you bury it at becomes an ecological dead zone. So it's one of these issues that for me carries with it a lot of consideration, because if you just look at it purely from the standpoint of human benefit, it's like, yeah, maybe there's some power capabilities to be derived from nuclear power, but it just seems like we've got so many other options for doing that. I don't know why we would pick that specific one. I mean, imagine this. We can grow wood, right? So imagine power plants that just burn wood. Shit. 1 second, y'all. I gotta bring my phone in here because I gotta fucking charge it. Whee! Okay. Oh. Okay. Nuclear steals money from oil companies. Wind and solar are extremely inefficient. I mean, pretty sure wind and power also take from the oil companies. But yeah, I don't know. Wind's not that efficient, and making strides in making those things more efficient every day. But how about this? How about water? See, I'm not anti-dams. I'm anti-dams in places where I don't think they can support dams. So I don't think California needs a bunch of more dams, but I do think the Southeast could use a couple more dams, you know? I wonder all the time about an even more deeply distributed power network, right? Because right now, a lot of the South's power production is centered on the TVA, and it's limited and very old set of dams. Now, they're old and well maintained, but they're still old. So, but I'm a proponent of water energy being used where it can be. And water energy is, from what I understand, one of the most efficient ways to produce power because, you don't have to rely on any fuel for it. Like, once you set it up, all you've got to worry about is the maintenance of the equipment itself, which is something you have to worry about, something that consumes fuel, but you also have to intake fuel constantly. If I remember correctly, those nuclear-powered submarines and aircraft carriers don't ever have to refuel. As far as I know, I think they do have to refuel after a certain amount of years. But yeah, they don't have to refuel in the same way that other vehicles do. They've got like between a 10 and a 20-year lifespan, if I remember correctly. The only takeaway here is don't build a nuclear power plant in the ring of fire. Yeah, I mean, that's one takeaway, but also don't build it near a population center, you know? But yes, I agree. It was pretty stupid for the people who designed Fukushima to think that their nuke plant was like perfectly safe, given the fact that they were in the middle of the ring of fire. Well, I guess not the middle, but they're one of the rings in the ring of fire. They're one of the sides. Hydroelectric is definitely a great option, but like all the other options, there are risks to consider. Yeah, I mean, the main risk, in my opinion, being lost property and habitat, right? Habitat being the more important one, in my opinion. But, loss of property is usually the one most people are most scared of, and it is something to consider when you're talking about building more dams. Now, I think that there are probably, I think that part of starting this process would be doing a bunch of studies and a bunch of surveys of all the land. It'd probably take a year to survey enough land. You'd probably have to hire 1,000 new surveyors and study like field agents and shit. But you'd have to basically get a bunch of people out there in areas that have fairly abundant and fairly reliable water supplies and study what are some areas that can use conventional hydroelectric technology without endangering any dwellings or any structures, and then doing studies on what would the floodplain be like at that point? Like, where would the water line be now? Like, for example, um, I live in an area that's pretty near a creek that is pretty long, and there are a number of places where that creek is, where if you built even a small dam, you could get a pretty massive lake and more than enough hydropower to power, 100, 200 homes, 300. And in a super rural area, well, I guess you wouldn't get a massive lake, but I mean massive for this creek. And I guess I should explain that it's not that big, But I don't know. I think it's just an interesting technology to consider when we're talking about the issue of getting human beings off of reliance of things like coal and fossil fuels in general. And I also like the idea of unconventional hydroelectric methods, right? So, for example, passive water wheels that use the surface current of a river at certain places to push the water wheel forward. And then, like, you figure out, I'm not a fucking engineer, so I would not know exactly what the right shape of all the components would be, but you figure that shit out. You figure out what's the maximum amount of torque that you can generate with that thing and keep it moving and at a steady rate, and then connect that to a gearbox that cranks it up to a decent output, connected to a generator. And I bet if you wired like 10 of those in series on a windy ass Tennessee River or something, I bet you could get enough energy to power 1,000 homes or some shit. I don't know. Um, but it would be interesting to fucking look at, wouldn't it? Or like natural waves, swells, tidal currents. Yeah, I mean, tidal generation is something that is being looked at very seriously right now. Generating just like basically generating electricity with the power of the ocean is a serious consideration for a lot of people who are studying sustainable power options right now. Um, I think at some point a lot of that technology could possibly be like some of the basis of that technology could possibly be like reimagined for use on waterways in the mountains and things like that. Because I think that there are a lot of streams that could probably support um, some kind of solution like this. And the reason why I think this would be a great solution, aside from all the human reasons, is because a solution like this would require a minimum impact on the environment that it was placed in. We're just talking about a generator shed, basically, like a concrete structure that houses one end of the axle and the connection from the axle to the gearbox and from the gearbox to the generator, right? And houses the next set of transmission lines that wire them all together. And then the other end is just a concrete structure that contains the other end of the axle. And in places where it's been identified that there are strong currents, but not a lot of like upstream fish activity, where a wheel like that could impede, right? They're placed these wheels, and the river flows, and the wheels turn. They turn that gearbox. It gets it up to the right, torque and RPMs that it needs to be spinning the generator at the correct rate, and then you wire them all together, and there you go. Obviously, you'd have to have a little more hardware to control things like if it's flooding, you would need to have an ability to slow it down and park it, basically. Not park it, but you'd have to be able to have a way to like slow it down. So you'd have to have a braking system, and then have a way to lock it in place so that it's not spinning way out of control. Or you'd have to have a way to introduce like some sort of gearbox that can switch modes to absorb that extra energy into some other thing. How many watts can an arc reactor generate? Well, isn't that the Iron Man technology that lets him like live or whatever? Or is that a different thing? This would require batteries. Rivers don't rage all throughout the year. Streams and rivers aren't reliable enough. Yeah, they are. It depends on the stream and river. I'm not talking about every little creek in the country. Like, have you ever been in the mountains of East Tennessee? Because if you've ever been up in the mountains of East Tennessee, you've seen the kind of rivers I'm talking about. I'm talking about rivers that they're never raging, but they have decent currents. And that's the great thing about a water wheel that's designed. Like, I think that we could build a water wheel that is balanced enough and large enough that it catches what is ultimately a very small part of that river. It catches a very small part of the river and turns that into a lot of motion, you know? But yeah, I mean, it would require some kind of power storage method, but I don't know if you know this, but it's fun. Fun fact, that is already how our power grid operates. So I actually grew up fairly near the Tom Sauk Reservoir. You can go look that up. It's TAUMSAUK Reservoir, and it is it's basically a pumped. It's what's called a pumped storage facility, pumped storage hydroelectric facility. So during times of low use, so during the night usually, Tom Sauk will pump water to the top of, I forget what mountain it is, but it's not important. Pumps water to the top of the mountain where it stays in a big circular dam. And then during peak times, it releases that water to help carry the burden for that power grid. And that is just one of the many ways that power is stored in our modern grid. Another way that it is stored is through battery banks. Yet another way that it is stored is through flywheels. It's actually kind of interesting. Um, so if you get a big enough and well balanced enough flywheel, and you get that thing turning, it turns for a very, very, very long time. Like, the less friction you can get in it, the better. And so we're talking about flywheels that can spin for fucking a couple of days under load if the power fluctuates too heavily. And so flywheel storage is one way that power is stored in the modern electrical grid. So yeah, like, that's already a feature, you know? And so I don't know what the solution here would be, like the best solution here would be. Part of me thinks that maybe you could find a particular part of the river, like a waterfall or something, or some kind of narrow stretch, or maybe you could even build, well, you probably wouldn't want to build one because that would almost certainly end up encumbering fish. But and part of the whole reason for this is to take advantage of rivers that are reliable and strong, but that aren't heavily populated, aren't heavily used or anything like that. And so there's still a lot of biodiversity there. You want to preserve that, but still take advantage of this wonderful resource that we have on the planet, you know? Did you know that vaping is really bad for health? No, I'm too retarded to read the warning on a pack of smokes. You are correct. It would require a dam of sorts, but just like you, I would do all I could to avoid messing with the natural flow of things we take for granted. Yeah, of course. I think that that's something that a lot of people who have manipulated the land around us haven't considered, you know? And I know I sound like a hippie when I talk about it, but it's something that I think should be important no matter what approach you take to politics, no matter what approach you take to the matter of energy. I think that either way, we should approach it with a delicate hand. I think either way, we should be looking at it as a delicate system that we have immense influence over and that we therefore have a responsibility to manage responsibly. We have a duty to manage it responsibly. And that means not using a resource that we don't need to use, and that means using resources in a way that using resources that we do need in a way that minimally impacts the environment and that offsets its impact. Nice and early stream today. I know, Book Blaze. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? We're coming up ya. We're coming up at you. Whew. It's hot. Can somebody kick the Outdoorsman 29, please? Is that something that could happen? The world's flow of energy is delicate. Mess with the mosquito population, and next thing you know, trees are dead and the soil is dead. I don't know. Wait, is that true? Has that been okay? So I know that they were talking about doing some gene editing to mosquitoes to basically eradicate them in certain areas. Has that happened in areas where they've tried that? Because I generally tend to agree. I tend to be very reticent um, to want to do things like that, especially because I think that human beings excel at nothing if not coming up with technological solutions to otherwise unsolvable problems, right? And I think sometimes we can limit ourselves and still come up with a delicious, wonderful option. So, in my opinion, mosquitoes are really like in certain places they're more of an issue than others, right? Um, like if you have mosquitoes around your house, you probably have a bunch of standing water somewhere near your house. Now that may be something that you can help, or it may be something you can't. One thing you can do to make sure you don't have a giant fucking population of mosquitoes all summer is to take a look around at your property and see if you've got any place where water can accumulate and just sit. And fix that problem. So if it's like a Tupperware that's been left outside or something, like a big Rubbermaid tub or something, and it's just like sitting somewhere in the shade, getting rained in and getting slowly filled up, dump that thing out, hose it out, and put it inside, or at the very least, turn it over so that the water doesn't pool and provide a perfect habitat for mosquito larvae. Um, if it's like a pond or something like that, then you're going to have to look at other options. But there are all kinds of critters that love to eat mosquito larvae. You just have to make the natural water feature you have attractive to those creatures. Man, the chat is retarded today. What the fuck? You're about to make me leave the stream. Got him. Thank you, Book Blaze. Humans create problems, and when they meddle, things rarely work out. Rats eat skeeters, bats don't poop, owls don't eat bats, owls don't burrow, worms, spiders, etc. Oh, okay. Now I see what you're saying. So yeah, it's one little thing in the delicate balance of life. No, I get that. Although I would say bats probably eat quite a lot of other insects too, in areas where bats are super prevalent. I can't imagine that they're surviving on a diet of skeeters because, have you ever seen a mosquito? It's pretty small. So, I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and get off here. It's been a fun stream. It's been chill. But I am super fucking hot sitting in this trailer. And I think I'm going to go inside. Or at least I'm going to go outside where the breeze is. Because now it is hot as balls in this trailer. So I will see you guys later. Thank you for hanging out. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell.